The lights flare as applause rolls across the auditorium, and Maya Torres feels her breath lock like a door. Evelyn Crane said, "Congratulations to Noah Price for leading our breakthrough platform." A slide splashes Maya's roadmap behind Noah's smiling face, and the room erupts. Maya hears the hollow pop of her heartbeat, a drum in an empty hall. Noah Price said, proud to carry the team while his eyes slide away from her. Jordan Blake said, "Breathe," from the aisle low enough to hide inside the clapping. Maya remembers every pre-dawn draft and every bug buried at midnight. Shame rises like heat, but beneath it something steadier answers. Evelyn Crane said true ownership is about stepping up, and the word ownership strikes like a gavel. Maya curls her fingers against her palm and feels the small moon of a scar. She thinks of her mother's calloused hands and the rent due next week. She sees the timeline she stitched from nothing, now paraded like a stolen flag. Jordan Blake said, "If you let this stand, it becomes the record." Maya swallows, straightens, and counts her breaths to 4. She decides to move before fear finishes its sentence. The corridor smells of dry toner and lemon cleaner as the door hushes closed behind her, and the applause fades like a tide. Maya Torres said, "They took my name," and the words feel strange in the open air. The hallway lights buzz, and the exit sign bleeds red across the floor. She thinks of every sprint review where Evelyn smiled like a locked box. Jordan's footsteps approach, unhurried, and the pause between them speaks of care. Jordan Blake said truth, without spine as a wish, and his voice is flat, not unkind. Maya counts her pulses to keep from shaking. 4 beats in, 4 beats out. A junior analyst passes with eyes down, and shame brushes her like a draft. She pictures her mother's overtime slips pinned to a corkboard. Evelyn's speech keeps echoing, each word a nick in the skin of her patience. Maya Torres said, "I have the comets, the prototypes, and the briefs," and her voice steadies. Jordan Blake said, "Then choose a door and walk through it." The corridor narrows until the choice feels simple. She lifts her chin, straightens the navy blouse, and reaches for her phone. They duck into the break room where a humming fridge and a crooked poster promise wellness no one believes. Maya Torres said, "If I file a formal claim, they will circle wagons." Coffee steam curls from a lonely machine like a small ghost. Jordan Blake said, "They will, and you will still be here unless you choose otherwise." The window shows a clean winter sky, and the city like a grid of choices. She pulls up drafts, timestamps, and a roadmap version tagged with her initials. A tremor passes through her thumb, but the files glow steady. Jordan Blake said, "You fear being wrong more than being silenced." She hears the sentence like a bell and meets his eyes. Maya Torres said, "I fear losing the little I've built," and the truth lands hard but clean. Memories surface of school nights, stocking shelves before homework. She sees her name set in small fonts across forgotten pages. Jordan Blake said, "Spine, not sting," and he nods toward her phone. Maya breathes, selects a folder, and begins a new email to the XX sponsor. The elevator doors part and spill them into a lobby that smells of concrete dust and fresh paint. A glass wall reflects Maya as 2 versions, the silent past and the speaking present. Maya Torres said, "If I walk into that office, there is no going back." Jordan Blake said, "There is only going forward," and his tone makes the floor feel steady. A receptionist glances up, registers heat, and looks away with practiced neutrality. The security turnstiles blink green as if blessing a passage. Maya recalls the nights she learned to code with free videos and cold leftovers. The lobby clock ticks in exacting confidence. Evelyn's laugh echoes from an approaching group, bright and brittle. Maya Torres said, "I will be precise and calm," and the words taste of iron and clarity. Jordan Blake said, "Led with evidence, end with impact." She nods once, files aligned in her mind like ranked soldiers. Shadows from the glass frame her as she steps toward the executive corridor. They stop before a frosted door, etched with a title that never included Maya's name. The hum of HVAC fills the pause like a low organ note. Maya Torres said, I built what they are celebrating and I will prove it. Her reflection in the glass holds steady, not smaller, not faded. Jordan Blake said, facts first, then the ask, and his gaze is level. She thinks of her sister's last message, a sun emoji, and a math score. Fear tries to bargain, but purpose speaks louder and cleaner. The memory of midnight commits lands like anchors, solid and numbered. She scrolls to the audit trail and bookmarks the earliest seed. Maya Torres said, I want my authorship restored and future credit enforced, and the words click into place. Jordan Blake said, then knock. She lifts her hand, feeling the scar press against skin like a seal. The door is cool, the future warm on the other side. She knocks 3 times, even, measured, ready. The door opens to a modest office where the XX sponsor's chair sits empty, and silence steadies Maya's pulse. She studies the framed mission statement and hears her mother's voice. Maya Torres said, dignity is not a gift, it is a stance. Jordan leans against a bookcase and watches her choose stillness over panic. Jordan Blake said, anchor first, then action. The HVAC hum becomes a metronome for breath. Maya recalls a morning bus ride with a cracked window and a head full of code. She sees a younger self sketching icons on receipt paper. Shame tries to climb her ribs, but slides off the edges of resolve. She reviews her email draft and trims the fury to facts. Maya Torres said, I will make this simple and hard to wiggle around. Jordan Blake said, plain truth sharpens like glass. She nods and files each exhibit into a clean outline. The knob clicks and footsteps approach the threshold with measured authority. The sponsor enters with a polite nod that says time is money, and patience is rented by the minute. Maya Torres said, thank you for seeing me without notice. The sponsor gestures to sit, and minutes stack like chips. Maya opens the folder with the quiet confidence of someone who rehearsed truth. Jordan Blake said, we will keep this precise, and his voice threads the moment. Maya lays out drafts with metadata and commits with hashes like timestamps of stubborn faith. The sponsor scans and pauses at a roadmap pane that carries her initials. Maya Torres said, these assets show authorship and leadership across phases. An ancient line lifts from her shoulders and hangs in the air. She adds a measured statement about credit protocols and review gaps. Jordan Blake said, we ask for audit and corrective attribution. Silence answers first, then a careful throat clear. The sponsor's pen taps once, twice, like a gavel softened by felt. While the sponsor reads, a memory cracks open like a door to a cold street. Maya Torres said, I learned to fix things before I knew what they were called. She is back in a corner store, stocking shelves with her mother's tired laugh filling the gaps. A teacher once said, brilliance is loud, and she learned brilliance can survive quiet. Jordan Blake said, you don't need volume when you have receipts. The memory slides to a kitchen table mapped with overdue notices and a second-hand laptop. She recalls tracing logic like threading a needle through fraying fabric. Doubt sits across from her and shrugs when the code compiles. Maya Torres said, I do not need them to like me, I need them to see me. The sentence lands like a well-placed bolt. She yokes discipline to compassion and feels both pull in the same direction. Jordan Blake said, anchor holds and the present rushes back clean. The sponsor sets the pen down and aligns the pages like bricks in a careful wall. He asks brief questions, and Maya answers with crisp timestamps and calm tone. Maya Torres said, here is the prototype build note where I seeded the architecture. Jordan Blake said, here is the meeting note where she assigned tasks and risks. The sponsor examines a slide that matches the all-hands display. Maya points to the origin file that predates Noah's first commit. She feels her spine lengthen with every precise citation. The sponsor nods once, slow, as if checking an internal ledger. Maya Torres said, I request an independent audit and restoration of credit. The room holds its breath while the clock clicks a small verdict. Jordan Blake said, "A clear path prevents this from repeating." The sponsor says policy words and promises, review. The promise lands cautious but real enough to stand on for the next step. They step into the hallway where the buzz of office life returns like surf against breakwater. The door closes with a hush that feels like a partial seal. Maya Torres said, "I expected fear. I found focus." Jordan Blake said, "You built a spine from evidence." Sunlight slices across the carpet and paints a bright path to the elevators. She thinks of her sister waiting with a grin and a homework problem. A message pings from an unknown number and stays unread for now. Maya Torres said, "Next, I notify HR and log a formal request." Jordan Blake said, "Copy legal and set deadlines." She drafts the new email subject line with clean spare words. The corridor air seems lighter, not because the fight is over but because the ground is solid. Maya Torres said, "I am not asking for favor. I am asserting fact." Jordan Blake said, "That is the difference that lasts." Ours glass room feels like a terrarium where careful words grow and never bloom. The blinds are half shut, and the air smells of paper and lavender wipes. Maya Torres said, "I'm filing a formal request for attribution correction." The HR manager tilts a smile that never reaches the eyes and straightens a stapler. Jordan Blake said, "Evidence is organized by phase and owner. Policies appear like nets set to tangle motion." The manager mentions processes and timelines and encourages patience. Maya Torres said, "Patience without progress becomes erasure." The sentence lands and sits between them like a small anvil. The manager promises a review queue and a neutral investigator. Jordan Blake said, "Please confirm the SLA and recipients in writing." The keyboard clacks 3 times and then rests. Maya sees the door in the glass and her own reflection beside it. She remembers dawn buses and receipt paper sketches and refuses to dim. Maya Torres said, "I will send the complete chain and expect acknowledgement." The manager nods as if nodding is action. They leave with a ticket number that feels both sharp and thin. Back on the floor, the open office hum turns selective. Conversations avoid her desk as if truth were contagious. A message pings in a team channel and credits Noah again. Maya Torres said, correcting for accuracy, and she posts a quiet link to her draft. Reaction icons scatter like nervous birds, and then go still. Noah Price said, "Let's keep threads productive," and he adds a smile that whistles. Jordan Blake said, "Stay on facts and timestamps." She replies with dates that do not tremble. Evelyn Crane walks past with a coffee and a cool greeting that erases heat. Maya feels the ache of wanting to be liked and lets it pass. She stacks her commits into a readable timeline and watches fear shrink. An engineer she mentored drops a thank you in a private note. Maya Torres said, "Facts are a kindness to memory." The sentence steadies her hands and clears her screen. The office resumes its hum, and she keeps her place inside it. Night finds her at a quiet corner desk where the air tastes of dust and persistence. The building sighs like an old ship settling on calm water. Maya Torres said, "One clean narrative from raw change." She cross-checks commits, meeting notes, and emails until the threads align. Jordan Blake said, "Label the gaps before they label you." She flags a week where author fields shift without reason. A map prints in her mind with routes, detours, and false signs. She thinks of her mother counting tips and holding pride like a fragile cup. She tests an export script and watches the audit bloom into a ledger. Maya Torres said, "Precision is a shield and a mirror." The clock rolls past midnight, but the page turns bright. She writes a summary that breathes in one page. The fear of not being enough steps back like a tired guard. Jordan Blake said, "You are building a door, not begging for one." She saves the file and lets silence approve. Morning brings the meeting invite that smells of trouble. The subject line is neutral, in a way that says, pick your armor. Evelyn Crane opens with praise, shaped like a hook. Evelyn Crane said, team cohesion matters more than individual credit. The word cohesion taps at a bruise. Noah Price said, we all built this together, and his smile asks for amnesty. Maya Torres said, shared work thrives on accurate attribution. The room goes quiet enough to hear the HVAC whisper. Evelyn mentions reputational risk as if truth were reckless. Jordan Blake said, clarity reduces risk. Slides appear that mirror hers without fingerprints. Maya points to dates, seeds, and early architecture decisions. She refuses the bait of anger and holds to the ledger. Evelyn Crane said, let's not litigate every commit. The phrase tries to close the window she opened. Maya leaves it open and names the process steps again. She feels the ground tilt and plants her stance deeper. After the meeting, the hallway feels like a narrow bridge over moving water. An email lands from a system nobody notices unless it fails. It confirms that earlier backups exist for the roadmap repository. Maya Torres said, if backups hold original authorship, the story stabilizes. Jordan Blake said, ask for read access under audit. She crafts the request with respectful precision and copies HR and the sponsor. A response auto acknowledges with a ticket that looks sturdier than the last. She sees a name in the routing list she recognizes from a past outage. The archivist once fixed a loss that saved a quarter. Maya Torres said, gratitude when due, pressure when required. She breathes and thanks her past self for thorough naming. Evelyn and Noah pass by and speak about timelines in careful tones. The current is strong, but she walks straight. Jordan Blake said, hinge moments look ordinary while they turn. She smiles because the hinge just moved. By noon, her calendar looks like a winter tree, branches stripped of meetings she once led, and silence replaces status pings. Evelyn Crane said, we're rebalancing workload, and the word relancing grins like a lock. A recruiter email flutters in with a sweet hush bonus for discretion, stamped urgent and friendly. Maya Torres said, a bonus to forget is a tax on memory, and she archives it cold. Noah Price swings by and suggests a joint presentation to show unity, which feels like paint over cracked plaster. Jordan Blake said, they are offering comfort to buy narrative, and he does not blink. The hallway conversations drift away, as if her chair grew barbs. She notes every change with times and names and a calm, tight pen. Project Chat promotes a subchannel without her, tagged small for speed. Maya Torres said, exclusion is a decision, not a drift, and the thought steadies her. She looks at her stripped calendar and sees time to build a sharper case. At lunch, the city wind leans between buildings, and her phone glass holds a tiny sky. Her mother texts a photo of a grocery receipt lined with circled bargains. Maya Torres said, I will cover the utility this week, and the promise feels like a vow. Her sister sends a selfie with a math test and a grin that could light a block. Jordan Blake said, pressure finds your breath and asks who owns it. She watches a delivery bike carve a quick S through traffic and thinks of the S in spine. A bank notification reminds her the rent edge is closer than pride would like. She swallows the dryness that comes with numbers and resolve. Maya Torres said, I am not gambling, I am auditing the truth, and the words warm her throat. She sketches a crude flow of decision, points on a napkin, and circles the hard path. Her chest eases as if courage cleaned a window. Back upstairs, Evelyn calls a quick sync that feels like a preemptive strike. Evelyn Crane said, let's align on messaging to reduce noise, and the word noise tries to shove facts outside. Noah Price said, team trust is fragile, and his smile asks her to carry his weight. Maya Torres said, trust grows on accuracy, and the room inhales. A slide appears with a roadmap watermark removed, and a date that smells new. Jordan Blake said, cite source and origin, and he taps his notebook once. Evelyn counters with policy quotes shaped like velvet ropes. Maya points to sprint notes where she assigned risk and decisions. The screen light paints her face with a soft, stubborn glow. Evelyn Crane said, "We can move forward if we stop dwelling," and her tone laces forward with threat. Maya hears the clock, the hum, the faint courage of breath. She decides the next step cannot be a meeting. It must be a stage. They step into a stairwell where the concrete smells like rain even on a dry day, and the echo makes truth ring. Jordan Blake said, "Pick a hill," and the sentence lands like a clean clang. Fear sketches consequences, retaliation, stalled titles, quiet exile. Maya Torres said, "If I leave it soft, they will reshape it," and she grips the rail. Jordan names choices with the calm of someone who burns slow and true. He maps a path to the XX sponsor with evidence and agenda. He adds HRCCs and a deadline that cannot be dodged. Maya Torres said, "I will present the original architecture and ask for restoration," and the words steady her feet. The stairwell light flickers, then holds, like a test passed. She feels the scar on her palm as a seal, not a wound. Jordan Blake said, "Send it now, then rehearse until it fits in your bones." In a small focus room, she rehearses to glass until the glass gives back confidence. Slides march in precise order, each a rung on a clean ladder. Maya Torres said, "Problem, provenance, proof, process, prevention," and the cadence clicks. Jordan Blake said, "Trim ornament, leave bone," and she cuts a flourish that hid fear. She times the talk to fit a window where excuses cannot expand. She prints a one-page, leaving no margins for doubt. The email to the sponsor goes with subject and stakes as tight as a drum. Calendar pings confirm a review tomorrow, with room and names. Maya Torres said, "I will be calm, concrete, and complete," and her voice does not shake. She stores the files in redundant folders, named like anchors. Jordan Blake said, "When it storms, anchors matter," and he smiles once. The door glass holds a reflection of a woman who steps into light and does not squint. The badge reader clicks and cool air spills from the Be It archive like a kept secret. Racks hum with patient power while cables rest like coiled rivers. Maya Torres said, "I requested access to legacy backups for the roadmap repo." A woman in a navy hoodie turns with a wry half-smile that feels like ballast. Sasha Reed said, "I'm Sasha, archive admin, show me the ticket and what you hope to prove." Jordan Blake said, "We're tracing authorship to earliest immutable snapshots." Sasha scans the note and nods once, a judge granting standing. On it, she keys a console, and the screen blooms with dates like rings in a tree. Maya Torres said, "Look for weeks where author fields shift without code diffs." Sasha Reed said, "That pattern smells of metadata tampering, not contribution." The cursor waits, and the room holds a breath that belongs to past work. Jordan Blake said, "If the backups preserve original identity, the ledger speaks." Maya steadies, knowing truth is heavy, and prefers a careful carrier. Sasha filters by volume label and surfaces snapshots like fossils under clean light. She pivots logs into a view where hashes align and vanity vanishes. Sasha Reed said, "Here's week 9, author Maya T across seeds and scaffolds." The next page shows a sudden shift that does not match commit content. Jordan Blake said, "Diff 0, author swap, that's a red flag, not a refactor." Maya Torres said, "Compare to the offsite mirror. It writes before any policy scripts." Sasha calls a cold store that lives outside routine, cron, and politics. The screen returns a silent picture of origin, untouched by later hands. Sasha Reed said, "Immutable backup shows you as origin on the removed watermark slide." A system note records admin edits made by an account with elevated rights. Jordan Blake said, "Name the account." The cursor blinks and authority steps into the light. Sasha Reed said, "Editor, admin, time-stamped 2 days before the all-hands." The hum seems louder now, as if the room recognizes a hinge has turned. Maya Torres said, document that chain and export PDFs with signed checksums. Sasha Reed said, I'll notarize with internal CA and attach snapshot manifests. Jordan Blake said, include the admin action record and access trail. Sasha opens an incident stub and assigns herself primary, with eyes that mean business. She writes without flourish and with dates that feel like anchors. Maya Torres said, I will present this to the sponsor with a remediation plan. She imagines Evelyn's voice bending toward policy and watches it snap on evidence. Jordan Blake said, propose guardrails, author lock, audit alerts, and peer attestation. Sasha Reed said, you'll also want immutable watermarking for slides at export. The printer warms and feeds a tidy stack that looks like spine in paper form. Maya Torres said, thank you, Sasha. You just made truth legible. The gratitude lands and stays, heavier than anger, and twice as steady. They return to a quiet project room that smells of dry markers and diligence, and lay out the case. Maya Torres said, subject, attribution correction with audit evidence and controls. She builds a one-page summary that reads like a clean bridge. Jordan Blake said, open with facts, follow with fixes, end with dates. She lists the snapshot chain, the admin edit record, and the immutable mirror. She adds a diagram showing author flow before and after intervention. Sasha Reed said, I'll attach notarized bundles and remain available to testify. Maya Torres said, request, restore authorship, update records, and implement guardrails. She sets a deadline that is firm without heat, and copies, HR and legal. Jordan Blake said, tone is steel, not flame, keep it that way. The send button stares like a small cliff she has learned to step from. She taps it, and the message arcs toward the sponsor with a quiet sting of finality. The reply arrives faster than policy usually moves, and the subject line carries weight. The sponsor calls an emergency review with legal and compliance in the room. Maya Torres said, the evidence has gravity. It pulled decision into orbit. Jordan Blake said, now hold your vector and let truth do its work. A separate message pings, and Noah's name sits naked in a thread he did not start. He asks for a chance to clarify, and silence answers with calendar invites. Sasha Reed said, I'll be present to certify your mirror is airtight. Maya prints one last copy and slides it into a folder that feels like armor. She thinks of her mother's corkboard and a younger self counting coins. She allows a small smile that belongs to effort more than outcome. Maya Torres said, I did not chase power, I reclaimed accuracy. Jordan Blake said, and accuracy changes rooms. Oh. The clock edges toward tomorrow while the ground firms under her steps. The boardroom smells like lacquer and caution, and the city dusk paints thin gold lines on the table. Legal arranges binders in a tidy wall, while compliance sets out pens like small spears. The exec sponsor watches the room as if measuring wind. Maya Torres said, thank you for convening this review, and her voice is level. Evelyn Crane said, we seek to avoid disruption, and the word disruption leans on her like armor. Noah Price said, the team collaborated broadly, and the phrase spreads like fog. Jordan Blake said, we will present a dated ledger of authorship, and he slides a one-page forward. Sasha Reed sets a sealed envelope down with a practiced tap that sounds like a gavel. Maya breathes in fours and feels the scar cool against her palm. She thinks of receipt paper sketches and the clean line from effort to proof. The projector wakes, its fan a small storm, and the first slide steadies the air. Maya opens with provenance as if laying stones across a river. She names seeds, scaffolds, and dates with a cadence that fits the room's breath. Maya Torres said, this is the initial architecture committed on week 9, and the slide matches her index. She notes decision logs where risks and owners were assigned. Jordan Blake said, please, observe continuity of voice and structure. The exec sponsor leans forward, pen resting like a question. Evelyn Crane said, These documents reflect shared ideation rather than ownership. Maya counters with specific lines that carried forward, unchanged. She shows a prototype video stitched before Noah's first commit. Noah Price said, "I refined and operationalized the model," and he glances at the screen. Compliance asks for timestamps, and the slide answers without heat. Maya feels fear arrive late and find no chair. Sasha breaks the envelope seal, and the room tightens a notch. Sasha Reed said immutable backups from cold store mirror, original authorship. She places manifests, checksums, and notarized PDFs in a neat fan. Jordan Blake said, observe a period where author fields change without code delta. Compliance traces the line with a ruled finger that does not shake. Maya Torres said, these edits occur 2 days before the all hands, and the page waits. Sasha Reed said, admin account ecrain, admin executed metadata overrides, and she meets no one's eyes. Evelyn Crane said, administrative maintenance can reindex authors for consistency. The sentence hangs and looks for a place to stick. Legal asks whether access controls were violated, and Sasha says no de instat carvery. Maya adds that the slide watermark removal correlates with the same window. The XX sponsor's pen taps twice, then stops as if arriving. Questions come quick and clean, and Maya answers like a metronome, tuned to fact. Compliance asks for independent corroboration, and Sasha supplies the off-site mirror. Legal requests impact scope, and Jordan lists deliverables authored under dispute. Maya Torres said, I led architecture, risk mapping, and roadmap revisions across sprints. Evelyn Crane said, leadership assigns direction, execution is collective. Maya shows meeting notes, where she assigned tasks and ratified changes. Noah Price said, I implemented pipelines and integrations, and his tone seeks safe harbor. Maya nods and credits him for operational lift without surrendering authorship. She proposes guardrails that would prevent a future quiet erasure. Jordan Blake said, author lock, alerting, attestation, immutable export. The room hears fixes wrapped around facts, and the shape feels right. The XX sponsor closes his notebook as if setting down a verdict made of paper and time. He thanks everyone and names the evidence chain as credible and complete. XX sponsor said, we will restore authorship and open a formal inquiry. The words reach Maya like ground after long water. Evelyn Crane said, we will support the inquiry, and her voice arrives measured. Noah Price said acknowledged, and the syllables carry more quiet than conviction. Compliance outlines next steps with dates that bite and hold. Jordan Blake said, we appreciate corrective action and future safeguards. Sasha Reed said, I will maintain evidence custody until closure. Maya Torres said, thank you for the review. My focus returns to delivery. The projector dims, the fan sighs, and the city lights step closer to the glass. She gathers the pages that carried her across, and they do not feel heavy anymore. Morning arrives with an email that lands like a bell, and the subject names what was won. The company announces restored authorship, audit guardrails, and an inquiry into admin misuse. Maya Torres said, accuracy is the work speaking its own name, and her breath eases. The memo lists her as lead on implementation and designates Sasha as integrity steward. Jordan Blake said, runes change when records do, and he taps the screen once. Evelyn Crane is reassigned pending findings, and the air loses a certain chill. Noah Price said, I'll document my contributions as support, and his tone is thinner but honest. Maya thinks of receipt paper sketches and the bus that carried her here. She writes a short thank you to the XX sponsor and closes with clear next steps. She adds a note to HR, recognizing the process that finally held. Jordan Blake said, take the win without spending it on gloating. Maya nods and decides to spend it on building a cleaner road. The team gathers in a stand-up that feels like first light after weather, and the whiteboard waits clean. Maya Torres said, "We move forward with clarity and respect for authorship, and pens uncap." She walks through author lock, alerting, attestation, and immutable exports. Jordan Blake said, "This is scaffolding for trust, not a cage," and heads nod. Sasha Reed confirms evidence custody and a schedule for quarterly audits. Noah Price said, "I'll take on pipeline hardening and dock gaps," and he meets her eyes. Evelyn's usual chair is empty, and the emptiness teaches better than lectures. Maya assigns tasks by strengths, not by volume, and the room sits taller. She thanks the engineer who once demanded a quiet note of support. Maya Torres said, "We ship what we can stand behind," and the board gains lines. The stand-up ends with a feeling like weather breaking for work that matters. Dusk finds the rooftop clear, and the city humming below like a patient engine, and the wind smells like cold copper. Maya Torres said, "I kept waiting to be invited to belong," and she watches the grid light up. Jordan Blake said, "Belonging noticed you when you stopped asking." She remembers the auditorium, and the scar that became a seal. The fear that once held her breath now hovers like a tamed echo. She texts her mother a photo of the skyline, and a line about credit restored. Maya Torres said, "I will mentor the quiet ones who build and aren't seen," and it feels right. Jordan Blake said, "Make the room you needed, not the one you endured." The sky slides from cobalt to ink, and does not hurry. She laughs once, a small warm sound that belongs to nobody else. The city answers with lights that refuse to blink. A week later, a small conference room fills with junior staff who carry careful voices and bright eyes. Maya Torres said, "This circle is for practice, proof, and presence," and she lays out a simple plan. They share first commits, tiny wins, and the courage to put names on work. Jordan Blake said, "Spine grows by repetition," and he sets timers for lightning talks. Sasha Reed offers a mini-session on integrity basics and watermarking. A data intern asks if quiet can lead, and the room leans toward the question. Maya Torres said, "Quiet leads when it is clear and keeps receipts, and pens start moving." The board collects small artifacts of confidence like a museum of beginnings. She pairs mentors with those who need a first-hand hold. The room warms without noise, and the warmth feels like a structure you can stand on. Night returns her to a quiet floor where screens sleep, and the carpet carries only her steps. She prints the final roadmap with her name where the work says it belongs. Maya Torres said, "I did not ask for a crown. I kept the ledger honest," and the printer answers with warm paper. She leaves a copy on her desk and another in a folder marked for legal. Jordan's message arrives with 3 words that feel like bedrock. Jordan Blake said, "You made room." She replies with a photo of the 1 page and a small sun emoji from her sister's habit. She turns off the lamp and watches the office hold its breath, and then exhale. At the elevator, she touches the scar and feels only skin. Maya Torres said, "We keep what we make, and we make room, and the doors part on time."